Another Dooley Noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point. Okay, and welcome into another Dooley Noted podcast brought to you by the great folks at Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios. And of course, doing it from home today. We're going to do that a little bit here and there. I mean, it's just going to pick our spots. We had a great show today. Again, we're doing it on Monday because I'm leaving Tuesday to go to Destin to speak to the Emerald Coast Gator Club over there. So, and then we're staying a couple of days. We wanted to get this one, and we'll have no show at the end of the week. Okay, and then we're coming back. We'll have a Tuesday show and a Thursday show, which will be up Tuesday night, Thursday night, and then we'll start on the Monday, Thursday every week through football season. And I'm excited about it. I can't wait to be talking about games that are going on. So that's exciting. Today, I'm excited to be talking to Andrea Adelson from ESPN. Does a wonderful job. Former UF student and graduate from UF, and she really does good work. And again, no show at the end of the week. And when I come back to do the show, we'll tape it Tuesday. It'll come out Tuesday night probably, or Wednesday morning. When I come back, I'll be able to talk about a game coming up. Now, I'm not saying we're going to talk a lot about Notre Dame and Navy or Hawaii and Vanderbilt, but there'll be games being played, and I'm excited about that. So we're going to have a great time this fall. I can promise you that. Can't let the results of the Florida game dictate your mood. That's one thing I've learned in life. Although it has dictated many of my moods. In fact, I did a thing for Gators Wire on Florida's 12 best true road wins, and I left one out. And I got a funny email from our Facebook mention from David Hitchcock, who played on that team in '73, and they went to Auburn and beat Auburn for the first time ever. By the way, you'll notice I'm not wearing glasses today. I really don't need them to do this show. I can read well enough, and I can. Though sometimes I can't read my writing with glasses. But we're trying this from home, and I bought this ring light. My wife got it for me to light it up a little bit better, so we could do the shows in the right way. But it reflects off my glasses. I'm going to figure that part of it out. But until then, I'll go without them. And I know nobody wants to see more of me. The glasses at least covered up some things. Anyway, let's get to the process service of Gainesville starting five, brought to you by the great folks at Process Service of Gainesville. Let's start off with number one. We now know who the Florida starting quarterback is going to be. Graham Mertz. Oh, shocking news. Well, I mean, it was obvious he was going to be the guy. I mean, you didn't bring him in here. You actually brought him in here with the Utah game in mind. I'm going to say that. I'm not saying I have no knowledge of that, but I think they did because they needed somebody to go into a tough environment and for the opening game, and your opening game is on the road, that had some experience playing in big games. So there was never a doubt he was going to be the guy unless he was hurt, unless there was some kind of injury, and there wasn't. So he's ready to go. Again, he's got the experience as his pro. The cons is he doesn't, they want him to be Stetson Bennett, but he doesn't have Georgia players around him to throw the ball to play defense. And I'm totally convinced that I forgot his name for a minute, Kirby Smart, last year especially, and even 2 years ago, because his defense was so good, would go for everything. Hey, let's throw a deep pass on 4th and 2. Why not? It's not something I normally want to do, but why not do it? We'll stop them if they get the ball back. And that's a real luxury to have. And that makes your quarterback better. But Stetson Bennett was good, very good. And he was on my Heisman ballot, and he did a great job of being a leader on that team. So I have nothing against Stetson Bennett, but it's one thing to be Stetson Bennett on Georgia's team in the last couple of years, and another to be it on Florida's team when you look at the talent level. I think Florida's got some talent, but we all know They don't have as much as Georgia, not even close. Let's get to number 2 on the process service of Gainesville starting 5, and that is Florida losing Justice Spoon for the year. The 6 initials you hate to hear: DFY ACL, done for the year, anterior cruciate ligament. So DFY ACL for Justice Spoon. And again, he hadn't done a whole lot of Florida, but they had high hopes. They thought he was going to be a big time player, and that just again hurts your team. These things do happen though. They've lost 2 players to it. Zipper in the spring, or it was before spring, wasn't it? Anyway, so not a good thing. As I say, mostly bad things happen. Almost always bad things are only things that come out of spring. There is a scrimmage Saturday, and the media is invited. And I thought to myself, you kind of are a hypocrite if you don't go. So I think I'm going to wander out there and watch a little bit of it, and then I'll report to you whatever I can. Number 3, this story's a little old by now because it's between shows about 4 days, but this story with Jim Harbaugh and the NCAA and him, they couldn't. It's very complicated, but the Committee of Infractions threw it back and said, "What we want more information on why it's a 4-game suspension." And the NCAA, I guess, didn't. I don't know. I still can't make any sense of the story. Here's what I know: Harbaugh will be able to coach those first 4 games. We thought he was going to be suspended for them. Here's what it sounds like to me too, and I could be just totally guessing on this. He's going to the NFL next year. He wants to coach every game possible for this team. He thinks this team can win it all, and they could. They're good enough. So why not push it back? Because now it's going to get pushed back a year, and he'll still probably get suspended because they violated the rules. I mean, like it said in the NCAA response, it wasn't just a cheeseburger. I mean, you guys were doing some bad stuff. So we'll see what happens there. But now you're stuck with seeing Harbaugh on the sideline. Luckily, very few of you will be watching the first 4 games of the year for Michigan, unless you're a Michigan fan or you see that they're down 17-14 with 10 minutes to go. And you go, I got to find this game. Let's get it. Number 4, the NFL preseason, full force this weekend. I watched a ton of football. That's how much I love football. The games themselves weren't great. There were a couple of good ones. Some of them were exciting. Most of them, they were what they were. It was a bunch of backups playing against each other. It was amazing to me how many Gator quarterbacks, former Gator quarterbacks, were playing. You had Richardson, obviously, was mediocre. Trask wasn't good in his game. Will Grier, watched him for a little bit against the Jaguars, playing for the Cowboys. Jacoby Brissett. Jeff Driscoll actually is out with a calf injury, but he's on the Arizona team. Florida's not supposed to have any quarterbacks yet. Here's 5 guys in the NFL right now. I think all 5 certainly have a chance to make their teams. The only one in doubt would be probably Grier, maybe. But anyway, and we need to get to the Campus USA play of the weekend. And this was it for me. When it happened, I said, this is our play of the weekend. I made my wife come into the office and watch this. And again, I got no skin in this game. I don't like either team. But watch this play by Nathan Rourke. Unbelievable. Throws it to Quadre Ellison, who I never heard of either one of these guys. So I had to kind of look it up. It turns out Rourke was a CFL guy. But what a play that was. It's funny because it kind of sparked a little war between some Jacksonville media. Gene Fournette was saying it's the best play in the history of the Jaguars by a quarterback. I'm like, and Mike DeRocco going, the game was meaningless. It'll be the best, and it was against backups, third teamers. It'll be the best play when it's a playoff game, but what a play it was. That was our Campus USA play of the weekend. Finally, I want to get to Braves Mets because I watched a lot of it. Most of it was on TV, either on ESPN Plus. I watched it on there, and the Braves just dominated the Mets for 3 games, 34-3. Sounded like a football game, bad football game. But boy, if Florida had been ahead 34-3 against FSU in '94, they'd still won the game, maybe. Anyway, so the Braves won the first 3 games and then lost the last one, but obviously huge lead now, 11 games in the NL East. So it was fun for me to watch. So it was like the old days when you could watch all the Braves games. I loved it. I loved watching it. I loved watching them all. We'll talk a little more about the Mets in just a minute, but let's first get to our break. We'll do that. Then we'll come back with the great Andrea Adelson here on another Duly Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios.
Attention all Gator fans, Meldon Law is giving away a chance to experience the Florida-Georgia game like never before. 2-night stay at the Hilton on the River, dinner at Ruth Chris Steakhouse, 2 premium tickets to the game, and a football signed by Coach Billy Napier, and much more. Go to the Meldon Law Facebook page and look for the VIP experience for 2. Good luck and go Gators!
Another Duly Noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. You can watch and listen to us on Facebook and YouTube for every podcast that we do on Mondays and Fridays at 2 o'clock. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, any of the other 39 platforms where you can find this podcast or your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or call me if you want to do some advertising at 352-317-3444. Okay, welcome back to another Duly Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome. Today, we're doing the show from my house today, as we said earlier, and it's great to bring on Andrea Adelson from ESPN, who covers the ACC and covers college football and has been doing it since she was a little tyke, as a student at the University of Florida back in the olden days. Not as old as me, but What year did you graduate from Florida?
I graduated in 1999. I mean, back in the olden days, Pat, before we had to worry about realignment and who was moving conferences, we just focus on football in August.
I know.
It's been a long time since we've been able to do that.
I know. I mean, I remember after, like in about 99, I mean, obviously Florida won last time. Well, the last time Spurrier won the SEC, but no, he actually won in 2000. Yeah. But I mean, right around that time, we're not thinking about any. The SEC is these, so it would have been 12 teams then, right? Mm-hmm. 12 teams, and that's the way it's going to be until the end of time. Boy, were we wrong about that.
Pat, we're always wrong about a lot of things.
We are. And one thing you have not been wrong about is covering this ACC situation. And, as soon as the names Cal and Stanford went out there, I went, what value do they add? And I'm trying to do the math in my head, and I'm like, that's not going to be a unanimous vote. And is that true that does it have to be a unanimous vote for them to take those teams on?
No, it only has to be 12 out of 15, which when you're talking about adding schools to a conference, you would think it would have to be unanimous because you want to make sure everybody's all on the same page. But when it comes to the ACC, and here's the interesting dynamic too, Pat, there's 14 football playing schools, but there's 15 members. Because Notre Dame has all their other sports aside from hockey and the ACC and football, obviously. But Notre Dame gets a full vote like everybody else. So Notre Dame is involved in these discussions as well. And they were one of the ones pushing for Cal Stanford among those 12 that would be needed to be able to get to that vote. But they have fallen just short. Never had to take a formal vote because they knew from the straw polls that they didn't have 12, but they had 11. And the thing about it, on first blush, it's like, well, yeah, why would they do this? I mean, there's no money, right? It's not extra money. It's so far away. Their football programs are terrible. What does this do for the ACC? Think about it from the perspective of an administrator who's just heard for the last 6 months that Florida State wants to get the heck out of the ACC. Mm-hmm. And maybe adding 2 schools might not mean something financially, but maybe it means security for the ACC long-term, right? Because as we have seen, when you're adding schools, you're putting yourself in a much more secure position than if you're just standing pat and doing nothing. And the perfect example is the Big 12 and the Pac-12. Pac-12 could have added schools when USC and UCLA left, and they didn't act. Who acted? The Big 12. And now they're secure, and the Pac-12 is basically going to go away.
Didn't the Pac-12 turn down the Big 12 too when they wanted to get together and just make one super conference?
Yeah, the Pac-12 has turned down a lot of things that, in hindsight, not very smart. I mean, they also turned down overtures from the ACC last year to form some sort of alignment. And this is something that, look, the ACC has been looking at. This is no surprise, right? The ACC would be looking at adding schools because of what's going on with the Big Ten and the SEC. They've been looking at Pac-12 schools for over a year now, but there was resistance from the Pac-12 side at doing anything with a conference that's so far away. So you have resistance to a ESPN television deal that was presented to them, resistance to the Big 12, resistance to the ACC, and now here they are with essentially no longer a conference.
Yeah, and it's it really, like, I know that, like, a lot of people have said it's sad, because they grew up with all this. I said, you know what? I grew up in Nebraska, Oklahoma too. I got over that. I'll get over Florida LSU not playing every year. I do. I know a lot of, and I should be an old school guy because I'm an old guy, but I like that there are going to be better games as we get closer to this thing.
Yeah, and people have already gotten over Florida and Auburn not playing. I mean, that was tough, right? At the very beginning. I mean, I had just gotten to Florida and I, got my first taste of that rivalry, and then it goes away and it's like, how are they not going to play? Well, people have gotten over that part of it too. Yeah, it's going to be hard to let go of LSU, but they'll play. They'll still play. But I think that's what we have come to in college sports, right? Is this notion and idea that people that maybe aren't necessarily a part of the SEC fandom or the Big Ten fandom, but they're going to tune in and watch USC Michigan, right? I mean, they're going to tune in and watch Texas Florida, even though that's not a rivalry any more than what Florida Mississippi State is. Well, it's an SEC game. People are going to tune in and watch. And oh, by the way, it's Texas. People are going to sit there and watch that. And the same thing goes for USC in the Big Ten. And, that's why there's some thought at some point down the road, you're going to have a situation where football maybe will be on its own. And those top 40 brand name schools are just going to playing among themselves like it's an NFL model. I mean, are we going to get there? I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised that if we do get there, because you're right, it's those marquee type matchups from a broader perspective that more people are more likely to tune in and watch.
And that's the thing. We all know that. I mean, the networks are basically running the show. And so you've got to run everything through them. In other words, can we make enough money? Can you give us more money if we bring in these teams? And that's the biggest reason that I was told by Scott Strickland that the SEC didn't go to 9 games because ESPN doesn't have that extra money. Mm-hmm. It just went through, obviously, a lot of friends of yours that got let go, which was terrible to see, but, it was business. And so they didn't have that extra money to give you for a 9th game. We'll wait a year then. And let's see if you got money in the next year. So we'll see how that goes. But the networks are running the show right now.
Yeah, they are. And one of the things that folks have pointed out to me in the ACC were kind of wanting the league to stay together and what can we do because of the noise Florida State has made and some of the noise that maybe some others are making behind the scenes in terms of, what's going to be the long-term future of the ACC. When these next television contracts come up, particularly for the Big 12 in 2030, is the money going to be there the way it is right now? Considering the shifting paradigms in distribution. I mean, if we look at ESPN, and obviously I work at ESPN, and I'm not telling anybody anything new here, just Google ESPN and layoffs, and you'll see the situation that we're in. And I am upset about it and miss all my colleagues and everything. But when we're looking at direct to consumer and streaming and all of these things, ESPN has to figure out a way to make that profitable. And they haven't been shy about saying that because that's what the future is going to look like. Okay, so what is that going to mean in 2030 for the Big 12 when they come up? Is the money going to be there? Not only to keep them where they are, but to increase it? Nobody knows. And so a lot of folks in the ACC are feeling, yeah, okay, people are wondering why we're locked in through 2036 because that means schools can't leave. But on the flip side of it, it does present security that other conferences like the Big 12 won't have come 2030 because they're going to go back out to market and they might not get what they think they're going to get based on whatever the market looks like in 5 years' time. Nobody really knows what that's going to look like.
Right.
But the folks who want to expand in the ACC believe having that deal with ESPN through 2036 at least puts them in a position to know we have something for the next 13 years that's paying us better than the Big 12, quite frankly. Not good enough compared to the SEC and the Big 10, but at least better than what the Big 12 is making right now.
Andrea Adelson joining us on the Big Mills Cheesesteak Zoom line. Of course, she works for ESPN, does a great job covering college football. And, you know, I looked up the numbers for the last 3 years on the most watched programs, and Florida State was, I think, 18th if you average the 3 years together, and I think Clemson was 14th. So that's what we're talking about, where there's value.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are going to be eyeballs on these teams. I don't know if anybody's going to turn on Cal, NC State. You know, I just don't think that gets people fired up. You know, it's a Division I game. That's about all I can say about it.
Yeah, and that's part of the dynamic with what's happening, the conversations inside the ACC. There are more presidents that are in favor of doing this than athletic directors. So you have that dynamic at play as well.
Right?
Because of the academics, absolutely. And that's a huge piece of it. I mean, we've seen Notre Dame athletic director Jack Swarbrick kind of vocalize the way a lot of people who are pushing for this, saying these are two elite academic institutions. We can't just let them sit on the sideline. Most of the university presidents in the ACC feel that way. The athletic directors, however, have many more concerns when it comes to A, there's no financial add here. So what are we doing? B, we need to enhance football. This does nothing to enhance football. C, traveling schedule-wise for all other sports aside from football. Football, right? Like it's only a few trips out there. But for your other sports, that adds another dynamic to the mix. And, you know, there has been, I think, more resistance for all of those reasons because the athletic directors have to look at all of these bottom lines in terms of how is this going to affect my sports, my athletic department? What are we spending on travel and all that other stuff? And the presidents look at it, wow, Cal and Stanford. We should totally do that. But there is that added dynamic, as I mentioned earlier, of just giving the ACC a little bit more stability, security in the event that some of your teams do decide we want to move and leave. And oh, by the way, if you feel like there's an eventuality that the Big Ten may end up getting Cal and Stanford, well, maybe you should act now so you can lock them in through 2036 because they have to sign a grant of rights. If they're going to join the ACC, they're signing the same grant of rights as everybody else through 2036. Well, the Big Ten contract comes up before 2036. So, right, like there's all these factors in the minds of a lot of different people in these rooms. But as of right now, there just aren't enough votes to say yes to Cal Stanford.
5 years from now, is FSU still in the ACC?
Oh, man. That is such a hard question to answer. I feel like there's going to be a lot more movement. What I've been told for the last year and a half, right, since USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten, is that the next breaking point, I guess, to use my own words here, will be when the Big Ten and SEC contracts come up, right? Because that's when you have another opportunity to be able to renegotiate with new members. And in the case of the Big Ten, yeah, they added Oregon and Washington, but those schools are taking half. It's not like they had to renegotiate a contract to add value. That will come later, right? So any school or any conference that's going to be looking at this has to be near the end of their current deal to then go to networks and say, what would it look like if we add, you know, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and D? And even though Florida State has been talking a lot, I have still been told by a lot of people that where are they going to go, right? If they make this decision right now, where are they going to go? Because as you mentioned earlier, if the SEC is not adding 9 conference games because they're not going to pay for it, are they going to pay for one school who's already playing with an ESPN television deal? They're going to pay them more to go to a conference that already has an ESPN television deal, right? That's what several folks inside the ACC have said to me. And from the Big Ten, it's clear what you're going to take half of what the schools are making. I mean, if Florida State were to do that, they'd be taking less than what they make currently in the ACC. That doesn't sound like a good financial model unless you think, okay, that's going to lock us in for the next iteration of the contract. But from what I've been told by folks in the Big Ten, there have been no discussions about Florida State to this point. So I don't think Florida State is leaving in the short term. But in the long term, I think a lot of things are going to look different around 2029, 2030.
Well, and I can tell you that the SEC hasn't discussed FSU either. And, I think the SEC has basically taken kind of a sit and wait with the 16 teams. They're just trying to get through next year before they start worrying about anything. And I think there is there's some virtue in being patient on this whole thing. But hey, let's not talk any more realignment for a minute, okay? Let's talk about actual football. And of course, the story that came out over the weekend that no surprise to anybody, Graham Mertz will be the starter for Florida. And you never know. He could be a guy who just needed a new offense and just needed something new. I heard Rick Neuheisel saying on the radio the other day that he watched a lot of their games and he said their offense, nobody got open in their offense. So I don't know. We'll see. We're going to find out if Graham Mertz can play or not. We know at Wisconsin he was very pedestrian.
Right.
Put it that way.
And I think from a Florida fan perspective, you don't want pedestrian, right? I mean, the idea that the starting quarterback at Florida is a transfer from Wisconsin of all schools in the Big Ten, right? It's just kind of like, okay, this is where we're at right now. It doesn't feel good, Pat, when you have staked your entire tradition in the program on quarterback play. That, okay, great, we're going to go with a guy who was mediocre at Wisconsin and wasn't great as a passer. That's what Florida's doing. But I understand that this is just a stopgap for what is to come for Billy Napier and what he's trying to build at Florida. There's obviously talent at running back, and the strides the offensive line made last year gives you hope that this can be a team that continues to run the ball so that Graham Mertz isn't having to win games with his arm. We know he's not going to run it the way Anthony Richardson did. They're going to have to rely on him to be accurate and not make mistakes and not throw interceptions. But if they can have the type of run game, I think that we feel they have the potential to have, then Graham Mertz can be the type of quarterback who can win you some games, right? If he's able to limit the mistakes that hurt him at Wisconsin. And I know there's some freshman receivers who have the speed. You mentioned trying to get something going there on the outside for Florida so they can make some plays. It's a work in progress, right? But the thing for me, Pat, and going to Florida and watching Florida all these years, my editors came to me the other day and they were like, we need some ideas for a story about Florida headed into the season. They're Thursday night, they're on ESPN. Like, we need to have something. And I'm like, guys, Florida is one of the more boring teams in college football right now. Right? You go from this historic past and the fun and gun and putting up points and Anthony Richardson making the highlight plays, right? I mean, there's always somebody identifiable for Florida. And I bet if you asked people outside of Gainesville, who is Florida's starting quarterback, people would not be able to answer. If you asked, give me one player on Florida, I bet people would not be able to answer outside of our little area, Pat. And I think
who is the face of the program?
Right. Who is the face of the program?
It was Billy Napier. I mean, that's
right.
Usually there's a player that you say, well, obviously during Tebow, that was ridiculous. But even since then, it was always somebody else. Or a lot of times it would be Richardson or Driscoll or somebody like that. But and sometimes it would be Vernell Brown, as Urban Meyer said that one year. Quite figured out, but it's kind of sad for Gator fans. But I think they feel like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just
Right.
way further down the tunnel than we want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like, I think from a Florida fan perspective, you know that, okay, he's got a plan and he's building towards something. We know what happened with Rashada. We know that was supposed to be the plan. It didn't work out. They had to come up with something else for this season. But in terms of what they're doing recruiting wise, how great they're doing on that end right now, they have the NIL and the collective situation, it seems to me, figured out when that was a mess before. Selective transfers that they've been able to take and who are going to make an impact, right? Like, you can see what they're building toward, but everybody wants it to be right now. Especially at Florida, when you're so used to having that success, and especially like outside of Florida, when you're like, what is going on at Florida, right? You're seeing what Georgia's doing. You're seeing what Heupel is doing at Tennessee. You know, those are teams in your own division right now who seem to be ahead, right? And so it doesn't feel like you're playing from a position of strength right now if you're Florida. And that doesn't feel good because you've always been used to playing from a position of strength. And so I think Graham Mertz is kind of emblematic of what we're talking about, right? It's not really the face of a program. It's not really a dynamic player that we've come to expect at Florida. It feels like, okay, we're playing a little bit from behind. We just have to wait for it, right? Wait for the payoff. And to me, I feel like that's what this season is all about for Florida. And I hope that the fans have patience with it, because I think we can see kind of what it's building toward. And again, if they're able to get, I don't want to use the term game manager because I feel like that's demeaning to a quarterback, but if Graham Mertz can make sure he's putting the team in the right position on every single down, then I think Florida will have a chance.
All right, before we let you go, Andrea, it's time to play Yes, Nowhere, maybe brought to you by Big Mills Cheesesteak. Street dining done the right way at Big Mills Cheesesteak. 3 questions, answer them yes, nowhere, maybe you're allowed to expound on them. Number 1, Power 5 schools, once all this realignment is done, need to go back to having divisions. I have decided I am totally against no divisions. I don't like this 16-team SEC where you can finish 16.
Okay. I'm going to expand on this a little. So I like no divisions, what the ACC is going to do. But if teams or if conferences are going to end up with 20 teams, there needs to be a pod system where you do have divisions so that it makes things easier for scheduling. So I think I'm like on the fence depending on what the conferences end up looking like. Maybe.
You're giving it a big maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I know that TV they want 1 versus 2, and I don't blame them. I'd want 1 versus 2 too. And when TV is giving all this money and they're running the show, you have no choice really. But to me, I think it's more fun when you have 2 division races, but that's personal. Number 2 on Yes, Nowhere, maybe, Mike Norvell is feeling more pressure than any other coach in the state of Florida.
No.
Okay.
I think Mario Cristobal is.
Oh, Norvell's the only guy who's got expectations.
True.
He's the only guy that's got to live with that in this entire state. That's the only reason I even asked that question. But, obviously there's pressure on Napier. There's pressure on Cristobal. But Cristobal, I think, really, especially, I agree with you on that. I think he needs to get something good's got to happen for him.
Something good has to happen. They have to win, I think, 8 games this year. I don't know if they can.
Yeah, I haven't really looked at their schedule. Well, I know they got A&M this year on the non-con, so we'll see how it goes. I got to look at their schedule. Finally, number 3 on Yes, Nowhere, maybe you are happy that school has started.
Yay! Emphatic yes.
I asked Robbie the same question last week, so he's got
was it as emphatic a yes?
Not
as
quite.
mine?
I think he was kind of like thinking about it more like UF starting and like, well, why do I care about that? I go, your kids are out of the house, Robbie.
They're off their screens, Pat. That's the main thing.
Exactly. And they got to actually pay attention to people. Yeah. Andrea, as always, it was great talking to you. Really appreciate your time, and you do such a great job for ESPN, and we love Seeing you on TV, I always go, it's one of ours. Yeah. But thanks again for joining us. We will be back with more of this special Monday edition of another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Studios. Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from another Dooley Noted podcast. And this is a great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer to Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib Co. to go. Come on down and enjoy it.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Tebow Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Bite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
Process Service of Gainesville offers a rapid turnaround on affidavits of service for Gator lawyers locally and nationwide. Our friend Scott Hart offers immediate responses on status requests and is a member of NAPS and FATS. And he has been a part of the community for almost 2 decades. Need service? Call Process Service of Gainesville at 407-697-9592 or email shartgators, that's G8TR, at yahoo.com. And make sure you ask about the paralegal legal secretary bonus program.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life. And the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
Okay, welcome back to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by the great folks at Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Hacienda Gator Studios. And now that I've finally got my office in good shape, because my wife worked very hard on it. The thing that I can't really show you, I could, maybe I'll show you next week, because I'm trying this for the first time with this thing, is there was a collection of wires underneath this TV, because it's for the internet, 2 TVs in here, and they were just everywhere. It was nasty looking, and she spent probably a good hour down there hooking things, hooking them back up. Is it working? No. Let me hook this back to this. Anyway, I really appreciate her. Got my pictures or my other Gainesville Sun cover hung up, and we threw away a bunch of stuff, and that was cool. Anyway, I appreciate her very much, because I want to do the show, be able to do the show when I have to at home, and when I can, we'll be at Spurrier's, and when Coach Spurrier's on the show, we'll almost always be at Spurrier's. But we're trying to just get to a point where we can do it at home every once in a while, cut down on my driving. Anyway, all right, let us get to our fun stuff. And again, thanks so much to Andrea Adelson for coming on. And I just was checking my emails during the break, and somebody did mention the Florida Auburn game and how I missed that. And he said, "How about a nod for that?" I'm nodding. Okay, I'm nodding. I missed that one. That was the one, and the other one that somebody brought up was the '85 Florida Auburn game for best road wins, and that. Yeah, and I guess it certainly is worthy. Florida was ranked number 1 for the first time because they won that game. But they also lost the next game next week to Georgia, and it was deflating. And I guess maybe it scarred me for life of But the 73 game totally should have had it in there. Missed it, but it's still a really good list. Hopefully, I got a really good one coming this week for Gators Wire on the 12 what ifs. 12 what ifs. Like I'll give you one right here. Now it's one that's pretty obvious. What if Will Greer doesn't get popped? What if he's still the quarterback at Florida? Who knows what Florida would have done? So anyway, I'm going to have some fun with that. And again, this is one where I went to my wife and said, "Hey, I got these 10. You got anything else?" She brought up 2 good ones, so you had to wait to read them at gatorswire.com. All right, let's get to all of our fun stuff that we love to do, starting with our Hester and Kipke 3 things. And as you know, Hester and Kipke is a Gainesville law firm specializing in the areas of workers' compensation and family law. Ken and Jennifer take great pride in their one-to-one focus on each and every client they represent. Ken is board certified in workers' compensation law by the Florida Bar, while Jennifer possesses extensive jury trial experience with a nearly 20-year background as a prosecutor. Don't believe me? Well, check out their 5-star Google reviews, set an appointment at hklawfl.com, or better yet, give them a call at 352-339-9920. Hester and Kipke, 3 things. Let's start with number 1. Did watch a lot of golf this weekend. Well, a lot of the FedEx Cup, not as exciting because Horschel's not around, and there's not, Spieth and McIlroy made it interesting. I don't really care about Lucas Glover. His story's a pretty good one. He got the yips, and now he went to that Adam Scott type putter, and he's putting better. I still don't understand how that's legal, but all the way, I don't know. It's golf. Anyway, he now is a candidate for the Ryder Cup. He's won 2 in a row. You want hot guys going in. I still would question his nerves on those short putts. Ryder Cup's different. It's a different animal. But he certainly is a candidate to be in there. But he's on fire. And you got to give him credit. When he started the FedEx Cup, he was at the week before the FedEx Cup, he was at 112 on the FedEx Cup standings. He's up to 30 now. And has made $5 million. $5 million. So good for him. Again, he and Cantlay, I got no problem with either one of them, but they're not guys that make my, I don't know, trying to think of the right word to use. Doesn't get me my blood boiling, or doesn't get me excited. I don't root against them or for them. And I did watch some live golf this weekend. Then I realized, again, like two shots in, I go, this is boring, and turned it off. So sorry. Number 2, I did want to talk a little bit about the Yankees and the Mets. The Yankees yesterday blew a 7-3 lead in the 9th and lost. They are in last place. Okay. The Mets, obviously a weekend where a coach gets fired. A manager gets fired. That's what it felt like to me. With the Braves scoring them 34-3 in the first 3 games. They did come back and get the win. Even then, they had to hold on. Matt Olson continues to have an unbelievable year. But the Mets are now 22.5 games behind. Is that what it? 22.5 out of first? Well, at least they're not in last like the Mets or the Yankees. It is amazing, though. It's not unlimited payroll in baseball in terms of that's how you build a team, how you have success. Who's the best team in baseball right now? The Atlanta Braves. We all know that. The Atlanta Braves, I'm not saying they're going to win the World Series. I hope they do. You know that. But they're the best team in baseball, and they built it the right way with their farm system and get a trade here and take a chance on a guy here. But, when you look at the guys that are on this team that are making this team great, it's Acuna, who obviously came through the farm system, and all the others that they picked up guys here and there, but they've had guys ready to step in. Austin Riley obviously being a big factor. And then you go get a Matt Olson to replace Freddie Freeman. And Freddie Freeman's having an MVP year, and so is Matt Olson. So it's a wash. And that's the perfect deal when it's a wash. But anyway, that's the way the Braves have done it, and the way the Mets have done it, and it ain't working. I traded away everybody finally because it was going so bad. And number 3 on Hester and Kipke's 3 things, It's a Philadelphia story, so I know Ken Hesser would want me to talk about it, or maybe he doesn't. James Harden saying that the general manager, Daryl Morey, is a liar, and he wants out, and you guys have to trade me, and if you don't, I'm going to cry and pout, and I'm not going to cash my checks. Well, you know better than that. He's going to cash his checks. James Harden, I guess it's because he tends to end up on teams that I don't like. I've always been I guess it was when he left Oklahoma City that I started not liking him. I think that's when it started. Anyway, I don't like him. So I don't care if he plays for Philly or not, but they better hope he does. All right. That is our Hester and Kipke 3 things. Let's get to our new feature, which is the Gainesville Quarterback Club, which is back on board, and we love them. We'll be giving you who their speakers are. I know the first one in August. I think it's the 20. I don't want to say the date wrong. 22nd. I probably have it written down here somewhere. I think it's the 22nd. I know I have it written down here. Can I find it? No. Anyway, I got it written down. It's the first Tuesday, or the next to last Tuesday. Do the math. That'd be the 28, 28, 31, 28, 21st, I think. Anyway, whatever it is. Scott Strickland will be the speaker, so that'll be a lot of fun to see what he has to say. And I'll be introducing him for that. And then they got some other great speakers as the year goes on. Andy Staples taking a bigger role with the club this year, and that's great to see. We're going to get Andy on when I get back from Destin and have him come on the show, and it'll be a lot of fun. Talk to him about what he's going to be doing, not only with the club, but with college football this year. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you the 12-pack, and this is going to be the Gainesville Quarterback Club, 12 teams that would be in the playoff as of this moment, okay? So it's basically something that can't happen this year, but will happen next year. And we got to get it ready. We got to get it ready to go. So we're going to do the 12-pack. There will be weeks when we instead do picks, and we'll just have some fun with it, with the Gainesville Quarterback Club and all the great stuff they do. And we appreciate them being on board again with us for football season. So here's my 12-pack. I go with number 1, Georgia. There's no reason not to. A lot of it has to do with their schedule. If not, let me tell you what, if Georgia had Florida's schedule, I think that Georgia would be picked 3rd or 4th in the country, which is still great. But I'm just saying, one reason that everybody's like, oh, Georgia doesn't play anybody this year, so they're going to win. And that's why you put them number 1. Ohio State, too. I think Ohio State's going to be really good. I think they're going to get back at Michigan this year. I got Alabama 3, Michigan at 4, Florida State at 5, Texas at number 6. Texas is a big X factor. LSU at 7, Washington at 8, Clemson at 9, Southern Cal at 10, Penn State at 11, and Kansas State at 12. No, I did not include the Gators in my Gainesville Quarterback Club 12-pack. Sorry. But go beat Utah and I'll put you in there. Although last year I got mad when everybody put Florida at 12 in the AP polls and everything. That was overreaction, I think. So that's our Gainesville Quarterback Club 12-pack. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be doing some picks on that for the Gainesville Quarterback Club as well. And, of course, they have a great picks contest. That's part of being a member of the club. It's a huge deal and big for me, too. I love doing it. I actually had some good weeks last week, some really bad ones, too. All right, let's get to our Adams Ribco to Go Gator of the weekend. And, again, not much going on Gator-wise this weekend. You could take one of the quarterbacks that played, there was a bunch of guys who had to play here, play there. But I did something different this week, and I'm giving our Adams Ribco Gator of the weekend, or Adams Ribco to Go Gator of the weekend, to DeMar Hamlin. DeMar Hamlin's not a Gator. I don't know that he has any connection with the Gators. But to see him on the field, we were all DeMar Hamlin fans on Saturday, and it meant a lot. He needs to be recognized on this show, so that's where we're gonna recognize him. He is our Gator of the week, and if he wants, I'll send him a Gator shirt. How about that? Tomorrow, just contact me and I'll send you a Gator shirt. Okay, I'll get that done. I got people. All right, let's get to our Leonardo's and Millhopper quick picks. And here's the deal. This is our last one, last qualifier. You've got until Thursday to get it in. And then on Tuesday of next week, we are going to pull a winner. And that winner will get a Bob Dooley Invitational hat, $25 gift certificate at Leonardo's at Millhopper, where the pizza is great, the salad bar is great, and I'm telling you, the chicken parm sandwich is to die for. And with that in mind, maybe we should make it a Philly steak sandwich, because Philly is the game. We're going to give you the Thursday night game. I think it's Thursday night. Yeah, Thursday night game. Cleveland at Philadelphia. And again, you're just flipping a coin here, okay? But it's your last chance qualified that we'll pick a winner on Tuesday, next Tuesday's show. We pick the winner on Tuesday. A lot of you will listen to it on Wednesday, but you know what it is. So that'll be, and we appreciate Leonardo's at Millhopper. Let's get to our Swamp Restaurant games of the weekend, or games of the week, sorry. And we have, of course, the great Saturday Sangria over at the Swamp. Free beer night with a cover charge. There's so much going on over there, and this is the place where everybody's going to be. You know, this is where you go to watch games, and so that'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait. I can't wait. All right, and again, I'm not condoning watching preseason games. I did it all weekend. I'm not condoning, because some of them can be really bad. Let's go. We just mentioned the NFL on the NFL Network Thursday, 7:30, Cleveland at Philadelphia. That's the Thursday game, and then there are games Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The Sunday ESPN game though is Baltimore at Washington, and 8 p.m. game. Yeah, watch that. I might watch that. I did want to mention the Tuesday night game. In baseball, is the Yankees at the Braves is on TBS, like the old days. Remember that? Remember the old days? Yeah, I remember. All right, let's get to that's our Swamp games of the week. Swamp Restaurant, great place to go. All right, let's get to Pat Dooley's Storytime, as always, brought to you by Eastlake Pediatrics. And again, this is another situation where I had something written down and I went, no, I'm going to tell a different story because I was reminded of something. Back in the old days, when I was in school, we went to see Paul McCartney. Me, Ken Plato, Bob McElroy, Steve Centipede. I can't believe I remember all those names. Well, Plato and I were roommates, and so were McElroy and I in junior college. But this was our senior year of college. We went to see McCartney and Wings up in Atlanta. Okay, so on the way there was a lot of partying going on. Luckily, the driver wasn't, but it's 3 a.m. because we left very late at night, and the windows are all rolled down. It's a nice chilly night and cool night. And all of a sudden, I get hit in the face with something. I go, man, who threw their Coke or something out the window? Nah, that wasn't it. That was somebody barfing right into my face, all over the back window. The back window looked like that scene in Pulp Fiction where they shoot the guy. It was just awful. And there was only so much we could do. We just had to get to the hotel, which was still, I think, a couple hours away. It was pretty nasty. And we get to the hotel, and I go, finally, I can get cleaned up. You know, I'd wiped everything off. But you know what was on TV? Braves baseball, the replay on WTBS. Because if you remember in the old days on TBS, they would replay every game like 2 or 3 times. They would just show Braves game. They would start at 7 and be over at 7 the next day. And so I sat on the edge of the couch and I'm watching the Braves game. I didn't know who had won, so I wanted to watch it. And I'm like, everybody's like, hey, you stink. You smell like vomit. Go get your shirt up. I go, I'm watching the Braves. That's how devoted I was a Braves fan. Still am, but I was way more devoted in the old days. There's a trash can with my footprint in it that'll tell you about that. But luckily, I've matured. All right, that's going to do it for our special Monday edition of Another Duly Noted podcast. Again, we'll be back with a show that will tape on Tuesday, be up on Tuesday night, Wednesday, right in that area. And we'll do that, I believe, from Coach Spurrier's restaurant. That'll be next Tuesday. Okay, next Tuesday, not tomorrow, next Tuesday. So no show for Thursday or Friday, whenever you want to listen to it. because I'll be out of town. We got a lot of stuff going on too. And then we'll be back on Tuesday or Wednesday. Depends on how you want to look at it. Here's how I look at it. I know the show is complete. We appreciate our great producer, Zach, for doing a great job with our at-home version of another duly noted podcast, but appreciate our sponsors as well, Titan MRI, Meldon Law, and appreciate everybody for doing such a great job. We're going to get out of here. Until next time, I am Pat Dooley. I am deep way back, and I am out of here.